Chapter 5. The Tunnels. Silent Swede stood, in total darkness, stock still, all movement lost to a yearning for inner peace. His back was pressed against an inside corner of a cold, dirty wall. Seeing Beverly cry over the dead bunnies was like being next to a fire blazing up. It had to be put out. To have her cry over a tragedy was not an option in this universe. Yet, he had done nothing. He had only watched, frozen. He had gone into a state of full panic. He didn't understand why. He didn't understand anything in this state of mind, other than, if people were to see him like this, he would disintegrate. Moreover, the whole world would melt away into an acidic poison. He could not be seen or see others when in this state of panic. And so he had stolen away, frantically, to his most hidden-away hideaway. He was underground in an unlit tunnel. Above him, in the light of day, was the main building of the Minnesota State Public School for Dependent and Neglected Children, in the small town of Owatonna. An antique building, built in 1885, it reached across the idyllic setting with a gorgeous heaviness, as if anchored in place by Victorian values. At both ends were two stout sections rising 3 stories, topped with steep roofs, implying dramatic attic spaces within. Centering the building, reaching its greatest height, was a turret standing in a somber pride, as if to declare the importance of the institution. This was the very tower occupied by Silent Swede at the opening of our story. The heaviness of the building was offset by the many large windows set into the massive structure. Upon entering the building, one would not be leaving the light. Also offsetting the heaviness of the building were the grounds on which it stood. If the Victorian souls loved strong buildings, they equally adored a park-like setting. And so, grassy ground undulated outward from the building, and here stood brick, 2-story cottages housing separate populations of orphans. Each cottage was headed up by a matron, a sort of surrogate mother, a stand-in duck for the lost ducklings. When the institute was constructed, careful consideration was made in laying out the sidewalk system. When moving from one place to another, one experienced pleasant vistas. The sidewalk itself seemed a canvas for gathering sunlight and shade, animated by shifting leaves and branches in turn. It was a happy matrix within a park-like setting. By the time of our story, the institute had expanded outward from the main building and cottages, manifesting structures to provide for effectively all of life's necessities. It had become known as the City upon the Hill, having passed through that decade of the 1930s when America, indeed the Western world, idolized the central planning of life. This passion for an all-encompassing control of lives had been unsurprisingly projected onto the institute, and out came a 329-acre commune replete with a bakery, cobbler shop, laundry, barber shop, sewing room, butcher shop, and carpenter shop. There was an infirmary and a cemetery. Virtually everything demanded from cradle to grave was there. A human could be born, live, and die. The institute had grown physically, but during the time of that growth, a spirituality had decayed. The original Victorian souls who inhabited the institute a half-century prior to our story could be imagined strolling along the sidewalks, touring the grounds above Silent Swede. If they could have done this, these Victorian ghosts would have been looking on with dismay. Their love of beauty, their sense of independence, paralleled by moral responsibility, their metaphysical gravity, all had vanished. A snide cynicism had taken the place of it all. And somehow, the Victorian ghosts were branded with guilt at having lived important, happy lives, as though the world had somehow grown up and now people knew happy, important lives were nonsense, were fake, were lived necessarily at the expense of others. Somehow, to be happy and important had become synonymous with being guilty of destruction. The ghosts were dismayed and perplexed. They couldn't recall having caused harm to others. If a Victorian soul could have been brought back to the time of this story, truly they would have been metaphysically disoriented. Why am I guilty for having loved life and people? They could easily be imagined declaring. They would have received answers that only bamboozled them. What follows is an exchange that might very well have taken place between the soul of a Victorian and a person alive at the time of our story, the latter accusing, the former defending. You were fake, but I loved truly. I know it in my heart. You were racist. I hated no one. You exploited. I almost only worked and produced. You were naive. But I probed thoughts and beliefs, seeking to know truth with all my capacity. You were benighted, living in darkness. But my generation gave to the world the light bulb. You were stuck in old ways. But we left the ground and took to the air. So we might imagine Victorian ghosts strolling along their sunlit sidewalks, touring the grounds. But there was another matrix of pathways. These offered no vistas. These gathered no sunlight, only shade. These were below the grounds. Beneath the grounds ran a system of tunnels. Through these tunnels ran utilities supplying the different buildings with heat and electricity. They were spacious hallways ranging from 5 to 10 feet wide. They created a basement-like feel, and they connected the basements of the many buildings. Through them, one could gain covert access to each of the buildings of the Institute. Though the original vision of the tunnel system was of a utilitarian nature, which could rightfully be seen as a happy benefit to the workings of the Institute, it can't be denied the tunnels had grown into a ghoulish stretch of spaces, dark and dank underground spaces. Most of the inhabitants of the Institute, child and adult alike, were ignorant of the tunnels, and those who weren't tried to be. And it was within one of these tunnels, just below the main building, that Silent Swede stood, within the blackness of the underground world. The grotesqueness of the tunnels protected him from others. It repelled humans, and so he went there. It was there, and only there, that such a panic as he was feeling could subside. Every minute or so, a drip dramatically echoed through the corridors, creating a sonar-like image of the surroundings. It was a place where thoughts could romp around at will, free of stimulation. Silence. A drip echoed. Silent Swede stared placidly into the nothingness. For some time, he stood as still as the walls themselves. Somewhere the world went on doing what it does, but down within these underground confines, a young man stood perfectly still, his ideas clearly running their own course without reference to the goings-on upon the earth above. Time itself didn't seem to have any domain down there. It had been the monster. In some form, it was the monster that killed the bunnies, the same monster that killed his dad. He had loved something, so the monster wanted to destroy it. Beverly, mothering the bunnies, was beautiful to Silent Swede, and so the monster sneaked in invisibly and murdered the beauty, turning happiness into tragedy. Silent Swede's young mind turned to notions of protection and vindication for the girl he had fallen in love with. But protection from what? Vindication over what? The monster was as mysterious and invisible as it was sinister. It showed up in different people with different motivations. It lived in the hearts of many, always triggered by happiness. It was like the monster haunted the souls of certain types of people and was ready to cause these people to jump out and attack any time there was something good underway. It was just part of the world nowadays. Silence. A drip echoed. Silence. "What you thinking about, freak?" came that voice. It was the voice from the tower, destroying the silence with cutting violence. "I know you're in here. I followed you. I saw you slip behind that room divider. I heard you go through the utility door. I know you can hear me. I can sense you." Silent Swede stiffened, his eyes like an electrocuted owl's in the blackness. "Kinda big day, huh? Got a lot to think about, don't you, Buttercup? Oh, my lord, that drawing of that Beverly girl was so embarrassing. Blabbing to the world that little Buttercup is in love. So obvious. I mean, she's cute and all, in her own weird way. But you drew her like she was a goddamned princess. You are precious, aren't you?" Silence. A drip echoed. Silence. "You like her, and she liked those bunnies. You can draw, I'll say that for you. And that girl really liked those stupid bunnies, didn't she?" It could be heard that the voice spoke these words, filtered through a sinister sneer. Then she shrieked the next two words with a punching violence. "Didn't she?" A drip echoed. Silence. Silence. "Well," went on the voice in a conversational tone, "I took care of those stupid bunnies. I killed them, took a knife, and ended that bullshit. They'd have died anyways. I was doing them a favor, made their end quick and nice. That girl you have a little crush on was just going to torture them with a slow death. She's a real piece of work, just like you. You guys are so stupid. I just have to go around fixing your lame mistakes. You see, there's more to this whole thing than you know. There's more for you to think about down here. I guess now you have to consider what happens to things that girl of yours loves. That kind of bullshit comes to an end. Oh, you think you're going to be some lovers? Well, Sugar Pop, that ain't gonna happen. I end things. I killed those stupid bunnies, didn't I? I set fire to the fire, didn't I?" The words of the voice began to splatter into the darkness, hitting the walls like vomit. "That girl of yours ain't gonna be okay. Whatever you love, whatever she loves, God you wish. You dumb, stupid idiots. You think you're so good. And I bet you think you're safe. Ha! Lucky charms, you're not. I've got news for you. She'll be at that nursery tomorrow with all those others. Well, maybe I will be too. I just hate fake love. I hate people who are weak. I hate people who think they are better than everyone else and that the rules don't apply to them. You think you get to pretend to be so good and honest and then be happy. You're so lame. So lame. And then I have to fix it all. You guys are such hypocrites. You'd probably blame me while I'm the one fixing everything you guys foul up. God, it drives me crazy. I will be there tomorrow. I'll be at that stupid goddamned nursery. I break that shit up. The wild ramblings of a lunatic stumbled into incoherent mumbles as it moved down the tunnel. Clumsy clanks and missteps described a demented exiting. Silence. One could sense the owner of the voice had disappeared. A drip echoed. Silence. Within the blackness, a young man's body stood stock still, slightly hunched over, shuddering at a high frequency, one tear dramatically dripping from his cheek. He could understand nothing. He felt everything. It was a love he had no name for, twisted into grotesque fear by an ugliness he couldn't fathom. It was a natural need to protect that which he loved, threatened by a monster he couldn't comprehend or even perceive. His panic, which had been on the verge of subsiding, now flared into a conflagration within his chest that baked his brain. Love, affection, always was attacked by the monster. Whenever he felt happy, the monster attacked. Why? It made no sense. It seemed to attack any semblance of sense and reason. This girl who tended to bunnies, this girl he experienced such majestic feelings for that he couldn't understand those feelings, this girl was in danger and didn't know it. And he himself was such a freak he couldn't tell her. He was so broken and lame, he couldn't enact this instinctive want to protect that which he loved. Such ideas as this wordlessly enveloped Silent Swede's young and tortured soul. He had to do something, but he could do nothing. He had to function in order to protect Beverly, but he was not functional. Silence. A dramatic drip. Silence.